With that said, we'll move forward to the DNs, and no surprise,
What are we leading off with?
we're just going to evergreen content this slide because athleticism, change of direction, the ability to track the QB in the pocket. And we're not just talking about obviously when they get out a side of structure and start running around and, hey, you got to get in the chase mode. No, they need to not just compress the pocket, not just win the edges with speed or athleticism, but also this is what I'm focusing on this year, converting these pressures into sacks. They need closers. And so I don't care how you win, if it's power, if it's speed, close the door, close the play down. I'm sick and tired of having these guys get so close onto the doorstep of a quarterback and not able to bring that quarterback down. This is something I'm going to be tracking all year for every single pass rusher for the Bills, converting pressures into sacks. That percentage is what matters to me. When I'm scouting these college guys, when we start doing draft stuff, that is where I'm starting at. I'm starting, who are the closers? Who are the people that, hey, it might be a small sample, but are they closing when they're out there? Whether they're a starter or a backup player, I need them closing plays out.
Yeah, and we saw the pressure rates in that graph that you pulled up earlier and the difference between 2023 and 2024. I feel like Leonard Floyd was sorely missed, like his athleticism, his juice off the edge, but his ability to close and get home. Like he would get pressure and he would use those long arms and his veteran savvy, and he would get guys down, especially throughout the first, 10 weeks or so of the year before looking kind of dinged up a little bit. And they just, did not have the pressure rate, but then when they would get pressure, they weren't getting home, which is a problem in and of itself. And then you tie it into, again, I don't have too much to add. I feel like you said it, and we've talked about it so much this year, or throughout the years. Just give us some more bend, some more juice, some more athleticism. Like, just not everyone has to just be a pocket compressor. They got to have some more, literally what we have up here, some more athleticism, some guys who can change direction, some 3-cone drill guys who will excel a little bit at the combine, those guys who have give me some ankle flexion and some hip fluidity and those pieces, basically everything that just Von Miller was all in one package, which was athleticism, dip, bend, and a closer. That's what he was supposed to be, and he was that before he got hurt, but they need that sprinkled throughout the rest of the grouping because Greg Rousseau is not that in terms of dip, bend, and, change of direction. AJ Epinesa is not that, and he's even moved more so towards like a run defender. Like he had some good run defense stats this past year in 2024, but he and Rousseau are very much just like solid run defenders. Rousseau is elite, still improving as a pass rusher, but they need dudes, the phrase we used the past couple of weeks, they need hunters. Like they need mercenaries and assassins up front across the defensive line in general, but especially that edge spot, guys who know how to get to the quarterback, guys who can get to the quarterback and then know what to do when they get there and have a track record of it.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done at DN and D tackle. In my opinion, it's the biggest priority this offseason because of how often the Bills only rush 4, and because how often the Bills use light boxes to defend the run and use a nickel as a quasi linebacker. The D line needs to improve. We're looking at some of the PRP numbers from PFF on the screen. Von Miller, great year, but again, he's a situational pass rusher at this point. He was a third down pass rusher, had some nice early down run stops here and there, but Epinesa is probably the biggest disappointment aside from the rookie Dwayne Carter, because Epinesa at his 3.7 PRP rate in 2024, that was a major drop off.
Yeah.
And a lot of that had to do was because he was now a base starter, starting DN. And so he had to play a lot more early downs, and that affected him when it came to creating that havoc and some of those splash plays. And so again, they need to inject some new blood into the DNs, into the D tackles. And again, we outlined what we're looking for, and that's going to come up when we get to the actual filming and targets for us later on. But it's something that needs to be done. It needs to be done now because it's time. They need those closers. They need to affect the quarterback. They need to bring the quarterback down. For talking edge, man, this is one guy that I liked coming out of LSU. I thought he had a little ways to go as far as development goes, but K'Lavon Chaisson played for the Raiders last year. And it's funny, when I posted these clips on social that we're showing on the screen right now, there was a lot of salty Panthers fans in saying like, well, how come they got so much production out of Chaisson?
Yeah.
And obviously the Raiders have Max Crosby across from him, and you'll see him show on a bunch of these clips, but Chaisson's going to be pretty cheap, 3.4 million AAV. But he was someone that when I popped his film, I was like, are you serious? He showed some surprisingly dynamic pass rush moves that, like you're seeing on the screen, double-handed scissor moves, cross chops, some violence in his hands that you just didn't see the first couple of years in the league. Even some like technical awareness when it comes to timing the punch of the offensive lineman, where he's countering with those cross chops and double-handed swipes. Like that caught me off guard. And of course, he's pretty athletic too. He did drop into coverage a bunch, and that's where I think having an athletic guy like him in there on the Bills' edge can help them and be a quasi chess piece. I'm not gonna say he's like the ultimate chess piece, but when we're talking like we're asking Epinesa to drop into coverage and how he didn't really get to do that all that often or make the impact in that way, having a guy like Chaisson, he can actually do that and do it better on top of Epinesa. Epinesa is good at it, but there's more athleticism to Chaisson's game. He's competitively tough, very tough guy, hustle player, chase down ability from the backside of plays. He's got that DNA that the Bills like, and I think that's why the Bills were interested in him when he was coming out of the draft. But there is some stiffness in his upper body from the hips up, and you can see the way he runs. Like there's not much bend or dropping a center of gravity when he is running. It's a little stiff in the upper body, but overall, I think he's come a long way. And honestly, seeing this tape from the Raiders this past year, it makes me believe that he still has some areas to improve, and he still has a higher ceiling than what we expected the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. The hand usage was what surprised me really off the rip. Like I kind of remember him from his previous stops as just being this guy that didn't really reach his potential and you kind of thought had more, but didn't really kind of deliver on it. But the hand usage, the swipes, the cross chops, the ability to use that and turn the corner. You see that athleticism going. I think he's in that mold of being that kind of that disruptor and a bit of a slasher in his game. And I think that skill set given, again, we'll see what happens with Vaughn and the edge grouping as a whole, but you add his skill set to what Epinesa is and what Rousseau is. And now all of a sudden you've just increased your athleticism a little bit. You have more of a moves guy in that edge grouping. And, a lot of it, again, is tied to that hand usage, but you have somebody who has an idea of plan, an idea of pass rush moves, how to set things up, how to execute it physically. He adds a nice dynamic to the edge grouping, given what we already think it'll be comprised of. I think this would be kind of a nice little spice into the edge gumbo or the edge pot that the Bills have right now.
Yeah, and like I said, Epinesa is still going to be there. Obviously, Vaughn's going to have his role. Hopefully, Solomon is that disruptor and he can step his game up. But again, you cannot just settle. They need to start getting these guys that can make a difference, regardless of what role they're being asked of them. And I think he would add a little juice and athleticism when it comes to, especially when it comes to like the sim pressures and creeper pressures. And again, who's coming, who's dropping. I think the Bills need to start mixing those in more because they just didn't do a lot of it the last year. And again, I think some of that was because Epinesa was playing early down so often and having to worry about defending the run, which he did a good job overall.
Yes,
but it hurt the Bills pass rush.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a huge fan of sims and creepers, so I am 1,000% on board for that. And it'd be awesome. It'd be great if the Bills had brought in a defensive assistant who used like a ton of really great sim and creeper pressure packages in like 2023, maybe with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, oh my God, those were some filthy plays. Like I went back and watched all the third down cut up pressures from the Falcons that year with Nielsen as a DC. Some pretty stuff, man.
Yeah,
everyone up near a line of scrimmage, and then it was very reminiscent of what the Vikings have done.
Under Flores
past year with
good
Flores.
Call. Yeah, I was. When did I do? I think at the end of this past summer, leading into the season. I don't know why, but I watched like 6 games of Jesse Bates just because I like Jesse Bates, and by doing that, I saw a ton of Falcons tape from 2023, and and it was like exactly like you said, like tons of bodies at the line. You don't know who's dropping and who's rushing. And Nielsen doing it without having horses up front for Atlanta is what was really exciting. And the Bills may not have, the horses that we want them to have, but they have better horses than Atlanta did in 2023. And so, nice little fun piece. And how Chaisson could fit into that, I think is a cool one. I was going back and forth of which guy I was going to start with at
Hmm.
edge, but because you went with Chaisson, I will start with kind of my hunter at this point. And I think, you know what? I just realized. So it's Dante Fowler. Did you pick Fowler last
Mm,
year?
yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
good call.
Oh, I
I
love
was like,
him.
why do I feel like we've done Fowler on the show? Yeah,
We
you
did him
picked
last
him
year.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I watched his film earlier in this process this year too, and not much has changed. I think he's lost a little bit,
Yeah.
but when it came to the quick pressure, because that's why I liked him last year. He was one of the quickest guys. I think it was top 5 or 6 when it came to snap to pressure,
Yeah.
and he still has got that. And I just love how he moves. He's very fluid.
Yes. Yeah, he plays like a power forward playing like basketball and just the type of slasher that he is. Kind of roll the tape here as we go into some pieces for him. From a metric standpoint, out of 122 qualifying edges in 2024, he was 16th in pass rush productivity. He was tied for 12th in sacks with 10.5, tied for 38th in total pressures. Overall, his game, we talked about it a little, juice and athleticism. He's a slasher. He wins with at times, particularly
Yeah.
versus the run, and it may put himself out of position, but that slashing ability more often than not helps him and the defense win reps. He's good with those BCR responsibilities, the boot, the counter, the reverse, his ability to read mesh points. He can display that surf technique. He's got athleticism to close down on mobile QBs in space. The first play in this was against Lamar doing that. I like that he can rush from either side. He's very comfortable in that regard. He's effective on stunts and slants. He's crafty as both the spiker and the looper. He has good situational awareness and play recognition. You'll see several of these clips. It's third downs and it's fourth downs, and he is recognizing the situation or the motion or the QB's cadence, and he's using that to disrupt and cause havoc and make a play. He'll also recognize some blocking combinations and some tandem stuff there to kind of make a play and turn the tide a little bit overall. So I like that situational awareness and the play recognition. I love his snap timing and anticipation, especially off the motion, like I said. And I like how he's able to transition some of his rushes. He'll get that first touch, but he can go from first touch to rip or to spin or to swipe. You're seeing a couple of these rushes here, there's that one against Rosengarten. There's a similar one, athleticism and juice, but still being able to flatten to the QB with some good core strength and flashing good technicality with hand usage and plan. He's the ideal kind of mercenary for me at that edge spot. Knows how to get to the QB, is going to play the run, and just slashes and adds from the juice, athleticism, and move standpoint.
Yeah, I obviously I still like him. I do think he lost a little, but he's got that predatory mentality, right? We talked about disruptors. We wanted pterodactyls. We want everyone attacking
Yeah.
downhill. And Fowler does have that mentality. Last year his time to pressure was 2.3 seconds. This year was 2.5. But I think the reason he went with Dan Quinn to Washington because of the type of defense that Quinn plays. It's very reminiscent of the Bills when it comes to the even front. But I think he has that attack mentality, and his change of direction is still really good. You see him when he's rushing, he is only thing he's worried about is beating the guy in front of him, and he'll use whatever it takes to beat him. He doesn't use the same move often, has an array of pass rush moves, but he also has again that change of direction and agility where he like if the tackle oversets out wide, he'll immediately stop on a dime, cut back inside. Like he thinks on his feet, and that's what I like about Fowler. I think he'd be a great situational pass rusher for the Bills.
Yeah, this
Mhm,
mentality and
mhm.
approach to the game and, again, effectiveness. I think they need more known quantities on the defensive line as a whole, and getting somebody who's this proven, again, to your point, has, lost a little bit of
A little,
of a
yeah.
step, but still very effective and would be a welcomed addition. I'm a big fan of Fowler and my other guy, and Michael Hoecht, who you have brought up now. I didn't
Mhm,
want to double dip too
mhm.
much and get as many dudes. I love, from just the versatility alone. I was very excited for that you picked Hoyt. I like this a lot.
Yeah, and this is a guy, he's a little up there in age, and he was a late bloomer, but if we're
Yeah.
talking versatility, if we're talking a chess piece, this guy is the chess piece. He's up over 6'4", over 300 pounds, edge guy, can play in a 2 or 3-point stance, off the edge, off the ball, at D tackle. He's got a little bit of everything, and he's
Yeah.
super athletic as I let the film roll here. But I picked this guy because I'm thinking about what the Bills can do to switch things up, to still rush 4, but to add some creativity to their pass rush and their defensive scheme. And Hoecht reminds me of Lorenzo Alexander. Like, get a guy like Hoecht. When Zoe was in the Bills scheme early on, the Bills had to get creative with him. And I thought that's when they were at their best, because they did a lot of 3-3-5 stuff where Zoe could be dropping, he could be rushing. Him and Kyle Williams on stunts were filthy. And so I think that type of creativity is needed in the Bills scheme. And I think Hoecht could bring that because of his size, his athleticism. He could be that chess piece. He's very smart. Again, he's been in the league for several years, so he's got that football IQ, plays with active, violent hands, uses that aggressive hand technique to disrupt the offensive scheme and blockers. You see him drop into coverage a bunch. Like we talked about with Chaisson, he can do that. And think about that, dude. That's like a guy up over 300 pounds dropping into coverage fluidly. It's so much fun to watch. And then he's got that hustle, that pursuitability. He's known for his tenacity and relentless drive in space. And you're seeing a bunch of that on these clips. He's a guy that I think when you watch the Rams film, he was doing a little bit of everything. And I think that type of player in the Bills scheme could just take the Bills' creativity to another level instead of just, all right, here are 4 down linemen. Let's just rush them at the quarterback. I think he could add that versatility and creativity to the Bills' D and their staff.
I like how you also added like the old timey kind of voice too, like to kind of show how antiquated. Oh yeah, this is what we're doing. Like that. I like that. I don't know if you did that purposely or subconsciously, but that was very good. I like it. Well done. I watched a bunch of Rams offense this year, but defense as well. I really, really love Kobe Turner. I liked him coming out of Wake. I still like Cam Kitchens, and then just seeing what Verse was doing, I really was watching for those 3 guys. And throughout the year, just regularly, even before we got to the offseason, I watched probably between 6 and 8 Rams games on all 22 defensively. And I just kept seeing 97 flash all the time. And your cut up here is perfect because he was flashing like all over. Like 1 minute he'd be on the edge and I'd be like, oh, okay. And then he'd be like in the A gap. And then he would like drop into coverage. And I'd be like, what the hell position is 97? Like, is he... Because I knew they had like issues at linebacker. I was like, is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he an edge? Is he a defensive tackle? Like, what is he? And I think that question is so awesome to ask, especially as we get to, I love that one of him taking on the puller right there, especially as we get to this idea of this Bills defense doing more to disguise their fronts and getting into more sims and creepers and all that stuff. When you have a guy like this who can be a chess piece because he can line up in a multitude of spots on the line, he can drop into coverage, you add that little bit of variability and reduce your predictability to an offense. And even he got him like making plays down the field against John Smith here, like the hustle, the motor, the versatility, all of that being within the size and frame package, and then the violence and the tenacity, like you said. He's just a dude that if you're watching anything on the Rams, even if you're not watching for him, every game he's making, it feels like 1 to 3 flashes where you're like, who the hell was that? And I really like Hoecht.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, I mean, he's 27 years old, just over 27. He had 30 total pressures last year, 2023, 43 total pressures. He had 32 tackles in 2024, 47 the year before. He's just everywhere, man. 24 stops in 2024, 30 stops in 2023. He is a stat box filler. And again, I think he would force the staff to go back to being creative. And it sounds terrible to say that about the staff, but I think they need to add some things to this defense to keep the offense guessing, because again, whether it's the offense off coverage or it's, hey, they're just rushing 4 or hey, the linebackers are out, so they can't rush Milano, because he's out of the lineup and Bernard's out of the lineup. Like, they need to do some things to if you watch that Rams defense, they are so creative with how they used him. And there are multiple guys across the league like that. I mean, there's not even an average annual value for Hoecht right now. I don't know what it's going to cost, but I tell you what, he's the type of guy you want on your defense. And he's, aside from DJ Reader, he's probably number 2 when it comes to defensive side of the ball, on guys I would love for them to take a shot on, because I think he could make an impact in a multitude of ways.
I second that notion completely. I really love Hoecht. He actually might. Oh, He's close to Fowler for me. Jones is my number one as well. And then it'd be between Hoecht and Fowler for my two, but I really like Hoecht. That's very fair. Also, I don't think I mentioned for Fowler, projected around 5.2 average annual value from Spot Track. I think he'll come in maybe a bit lower than that. If the Bills could get him at like 4.5, 2.5, somewhere in that range, that would be a really nice, obviously, cost-effective ad for them as well. So for my next edge, I kind of went somewhat versatility, but also tried to tick the kind of not stereotypical box, but pocket compression box that the Bills typically like to go to. So I went with John Kaminsky, defensive lineman. I say defensive lineman because he's used in a multitude of ways from the Detroit Lions. He tore his MCL in camp in 2024. Kind of a bit of foreshadowing for everybody on the Lions defense just being out with injury the entirety of this season. So he missed all of 2024, but in 2023, that's the tape that we're going to be looking at here, just with what he was able to do. I really liked it for a multitude of ways. He'll kick inside on known passing situations and on known passing downs, and he is just pure pocket compression and speed to power. And a lot of these, you're going to see him load up and drive interior offensive linemen back. You'll see him line up in like a wide interior alignment. You'll see him line up at nose and a 0 right over the center. You'll see him line up in a 4 or a 4-eye or a 5 or line up out wide as well. He's got a good get off. He had a 0.97 get off in 2023. That was very similar to Danielle Hunter, Matabike, Kenny Clark, Christian Wilkins. His moves, not a big moves guy. It's really push, pull, push to rip, long arm. Again, everything speed to power, compression, really good motor, relentless, good hand usage, pop and placement. This one right here against the Bucks is one that I want to stop and just go a little like slow-mo with, just the pocket compression aspect of it, because we saw it a lot from the interior. This one, just with him lining up out wide, and you see leans, gets that get off, and just how he drives Gadecki just back immediately right into Baker's lap. That's the type of play style that he has and that he plays with. Against the run, he uses his hands to establish first touch and then works to extend while reading the running back's track. He will shock and or stack and shed. Not a ton of dip, not a ton of bend. A good athlete. One of those plays he's, he's got a good surf technique and he's crashing down on fields and making the play and the stop there. Shouldn't be too cost heavy. Average annual value, I think, will come in somewhere around 2.25 to 2.75 million. What I really just like him for is if he's going to be an edge rotation guy, he's going to set the edge against the run. He can compress the pocket, but then you can use him as a bit of a chess piece on third down, a la a little bit of the Dwayne Smoot type of role, kicking him inside, letting him work against guards, centers. He's good from a lateral explosion ability. I just think he adds that nastiness and tenacity as a run defender and as an edge, but also somebody that they can kick inside and add some flexibility and versatility in known passing downs and situations.
I think that's exactly the role he would play for the Bills because if I remember correctly, coming into the league, he was more of that big DN, that base DN that, like you're seeing in a lot of these clips, that would bump inside on obvious pass rush situations. I think that's exactly what we saw with Smoot last year, especially when you're talking those obvious pass rush situations. We outlined how important Smoot was in a lot of those pass rush scenarios and setting the pass rush plan for the defense. I think Kaminsky is that same type of guy, bigger, veteran that can bump inside, but also, again, has some ability to compress the pocket as an edge player.
Yeah, so much of the wish list and like what we were doing for this episode was like, oh, what I hope to see and what I do, like, or what I like want in my heart, but that also makes sense logically. Kaminsky was more of the one that I don't think it's a complete scheme fit because of how we operate in Detroit, but I do think he can play as like a 4-down edge, but he does have more of the traditional type of thing that they look for, like bigger bodied pocket compressor, kick inside. And I was like, okay, let me operate in that regard. But again, the tape is nice. I would have been interested to see what he would look like had he not have gotten hurt this past year. Obviously, that's a significant piece as well, right? What does he look like coming back from injury? That might make him even more cost effective. But he was a guy that really added a lot of juice from 2022 through 2023 for that Lions squad. And even some numbers in that 2022 seasons when I first noticed him because they played the Bills that year. 44 pressures for him in that year. And that goes along with 16 stops. He also had 18 stops, 29 pressures in 2023, does a lot of the dirty work. And a lot of fun things for that Lions, or did a lot of fun things for that Lions defense. And I think he would be potentially a welcomed addition for the Buffalo Bills.